thumbnail sketch of my spiritual journey, and then I want to share a few lessons that I've learned along the way, which I think apply to all of us. I see my spiritual journey as a path less traveled within the already narrow spiritual path, a unique path with somewhat unusual experiences and events, though of course each of us has our own unique journey, and looking retrospectively on the path we had traversed, we can't help but marvel at what God has done. My spiritual journey goes back more than 50 years and runs in roughly 8-year cycles. During the first two, I grew up as an atheist child and teenager in Czechoslovakia, which is now the Czech Republic. And at that time, it was a communist country where few people were believers and church attendance was discouraged. My family was able to leave the country with our dad by God's grace and with the assistance of spirit helpers. And we spent 2 years in Sweden before immigrating to Australia in 1968. God started working with me during the next 8 years at a very low point in my life and called me to conversion through a non-mainstream church in Melbourne, which provided me with a good spiritual foundation. God gave my life a hope and purpose and connected me with a loving spiritual community through which He also provided my wonderful life partner of now 45 years, Alex. 8 years later, Alex and I got married, and during the next roughly 2 8-year cycles, worked side by side at the church headquarters in California, USA. The next 8 years found us back in the former Czechoslovakia, by then the Czech Republic. In November 1989, communism had fallen, so it was safe for me to go and visit in 1990. From this visit came the idea and desire, first on my husband's part, who is not Czech, of moving there to live. After 3 years of earnest prayer and seeking guidance, when our work for the church in California was coming to a natural end, this desire came to fruition. God had placed us in a little village close to a small town, which was a big contrast to having lived in the very urban Los Angeles area. A couple of years after we left the USA, our church was shaken through a massive change of direction and teachings, which understandably caused great trauma for many and resulted in a major split. In His mercy, God had moved us ahead of time to the edge of the storm, so to speak. The Czech Republic was a definite refuge and also an opportunity to get to know other Christians, in this case Seventh-day Adventists with whom we fellowshiped in a home church, and Catholics, several of whom we got to know as friends. These experiences taught me to be less judgmental of those with other spiritual views, but rather appreciate them for who they are, even if I can't agree with all that they believe. When my mother unexpectedly passed away in early 2001, there was a turning point and a clear signal to return to Australia to be available to my now widowed father, who was in his late 70s. We were at an age when it was difficult to get into the Australian job market after so many years away, but 6 months later, a lovely door opened to teach English in Korea. For nearly 4 years, we taught at a Christian university connected with the Nazarene Church, south of the capital Seoul. We were also introduced to Buddhism. About one-third of believers in Korea are Buddhist. After that, we spent another year in Saudi Arabia, a very strict Islamic country where the Muslims are called to pray 5 times a day while businesses and activities come to a halt, and women have a lot fewer rights than their Western counterparts take for granted. Here, in a church meeting on the British Embassy grounds and consisting of expatriate Christians of various denominations, we were exposed to members of yet other Christian groups. We were blessed and privileged to be able to retire after returning to our home in Australia in 2007 and do spiritual work full-time on the home front. My ministry has been largely a writing ministry that in the first few years had in part overlapped with my husband's writing ministry. I've written several spiritual books, including a trilogy on seeing spiritual realities in nature. And I'll just quickly show those. But these were written before my divine love journey officially started, but they are still spiritual. And I always get inspired by nature. And I've also written a couple of books on the divine love journey, including one on Jesus' true gospel and one on the new birth. And I've also created a number of websites which have now been streamlined and combined into just two. My pride and joy is universalspirituality.net, which I paid to get redesigned about 3 years ago. It's presently my main evangelization tool and lists all my books and booklets, which are downloadable as PDFs for free. And I'll put the link where you can download them after I finish. I'll put it in the chats. And some are also available as paperback or Kindle from Amazon and elsewhere. During the first 8 years after coming back from overseas, another time cycle, I had completed a master in theology, been introduced to Catholic spirituality, both through reading and on the ground, and further broadened my perspective by being exposed to Christian meditation and Buddhism. For a short period in 2013, I had reconnected with my old church through one of its numerous offshoots that resulted from the split. This was like one last visit to the old spiritual home, the purpose of which had been accomplished. I spent time with old friends, briefly reconnected with others via emails or phone, and learned what yet others had been up to or that they had died. It was like leafing through an old album and enclosing it again and returning to the present. Yet, I'm very grateful for the 25 or so years of active involvement during my early to middle adulthood. It gave me an excellent spiritual and biblical foundation to then go on and build further. It got me into a regular daily prayer and spiritual reading habit, which I have maintained to this day. A seemingly small but significant incident, no doubt divinely inspired, occurred in early 2014 at the start of another time cycle. A book I was lent, Life in the World Unseen, a mediated work by Anthony Borgia, indirectly led me via A.J. Miller's website to the two FCDT volumes of the Paget Messages, Angelic Revelations of Divine Truth in PDF format. Mediumship was something I was uncomfortable about due to past conditioning, but the contents really resonated with me and made sense. I kept reading and summarizing the information and posting it on my website. A couple on the Divine Love Path in Melbourne became for a short time my mentors. They also connected me with a number of Divine Love community followers in Australia and also with the Foundation Church of Divine Truth. In early October 2014, I became an FCDT member, and in 2015, I applied for and completed the ministerial training course of the church. In 2018, I was asked if I would consider becoming a trustee of the church, and I accepted. I'm continuing to write and add to my website. I'm also, with Michael Netball, the co-editor of the Divine Love newsletter that's serving the whole community. I, I had attended 5 Divine Love retreats in the US and 1 in Canada, and assisted in organizing the last 3. I contribute to online discussion groups and keep in email contact with community members, sharing insights and providing encouragement and or answering questions as needed. I participate in 2 weekly Zoom groups. I sense myself growing in the divine love and being used by God in line with my God-given gifts, insights, and wisdom. My intention for the rest of my earthly life is to bring love and light into this dark world and help people as I am able. And I look forward to one day reaching the celestial spheres of untold happiness and wonderful service and growth opportunities. I'm also looking forward to seeing this earth finally at peace and in harmony with God, with no more hate, anger, killing, destruction, hunger, sickness, and other forms of suffering. I don't know when either one will happen, but both are a true hope and vision worth holding on to. So, this in a nutshell is my spiritual journey. And Jean also asked us to mention something about a newsletter. And I don't have much to say except that we hope the community members are finding it valuable and that we welcome your contributions and feedback. It's a team effort, and without member contributions, there will not be much to include. So if you get inspired to write an article that could help others, please send it to us. Also, let us know about any accomplishments like a new book, website, outreach, etc. And in the time that I've left, I'd like to share some lessons that I've learned over the years and that I feel others might also benefit from. My first church affiliation was one where the group felt we had unique truths and were right, while others didn't quite have it. Sounds familiar? This resulted in an unhealthy feeling of superiority, pride, and looking down on others. It also led to being judgmental and condescending, none of which are loving attitudes. With our understanding of the divine love and other truths, our community can also fall into this pitfall if we are not careful. To some degree, we can be justified in feeling we have unique and special truths. This, however, was given to each of us by God's grace. I believe that we were all meant to be on and led to this path. A more appropriate response, in my opinion, and an antidote to pride would be humility. It's also good to recognize that there is still a great deal that we do not know and understand, and that having divine love in our souls is not exclusive to our group or community. Paget was told over and over again that some, or even many, in the churches were close to the kingdom of God as a result of a lot of divine love in their souls. A related pitfall to the above that I too experienced, and that is also generating pride and arrogance, is believing that we are the only group doing God's work. I would like to submit that there are many groups out there that are promoting love and light in the best way they can and having a significant positive impact on the world. They may not all be Christian, but many adherents to other religions or none are making the world a better place. Another important realization for me has been that we are all unique and each have a different journey on the divine love path, as well as different gifts. Therefore, comparing among ourselves and wishing for others' experiences and gifts is counterproductive and can make us unnecessarily frustrated and miserable. The key is getting to know and appreciate our gifts and seeking ways to use them to the best of our ability. It means accepting ourselves as we are, being grateful for what God has done in our lives, and seeking guidance through prayer on how to be the best we can be. Akin to the above is the realization that while many in the divine love have psychic gifts, be it mediumship, seeing or feeling the presence of spirit, having visions, etc., and while many also have physical sensations in receiving God's love, there are quite a few who don't have any of these experiences. With the fairly strong emphasis on physical sensations in our community, those who don't have these experiences can and have felt like something is wrong with them or they are doing something wrong, not praying in the right way, not receiving the love into their souls, etc. This is not true because the messages tell us that many in the churches have the divine love in their souls without direct awareness or understanding of it. A sizable number of us feel retrospectively that we were receiving God's love for a longer or shorter time before learning about it or discovering the messages. The key to remember is that if we are sincerely seeking God and His love through earnest desire and heartfelt prayer, you can be assured and have the faith that you are receiving it. The proof of the pudding is not so much physical sensation as a changed life. We are becoming a new creature who are acquiring the divine nature, the loving nature of our Heavenly Father that's enabling us to fulfill the 11th commandment of Jesus to love as He loved, with the divine love. In growing in the love, we are all work in progress, and I dare say none of us have reached a point where we can act lovingly all the time. This takes a constant alertness to the choices we make in every situation. It's not enough to pray for the love. We have to choose over and over again to live the love. The messages tell us that in this respect, the natural love path and the divine love path run parallel. We still have to choose to do the right thing, to act kindly, to imitate Jesus' example, though with our heart and soul being transformed by the love, this gets easier and easier. Tying in with the above point, while we are praying for God's love, it's important to remember that no community or church group will be perfect as long as it consists of imperfect humans. When we join the community, it's easy to expect that all people will act lovingly and then be disappointed when this is not always the case. Realistically speaking, in every group, we'll get our toes stood on or experience hurts and disappointments. I've had to come to this realization and downgrade my expectations ever since the first church I joined when I was in my late teens. So the key is to realize that most of the time people mean well, do the best they can, but will not act lovingly all the time. Further related to the above is the importance of not allowing grudges to fester, which can then turn into bitterness. These are the kind of things that defile our souls and hinder our prayers. They hurt and harm us more than the offending party. So be forgiving, compassionate, loving, and above all, practice the golden rule. Do or don't do unto others what you would like them to do or avoid doing unto you. And most importantly, let's keep in mind that the new commandment that Jesus gave to his Disciples is, quote, love one another as I've loved you, end of quote, with the divine love transforming our souls. And lastly, view others through God's eyes. As God's children, made in His image, created all good, and eventually, despite the sins that are presently defiling our souls, everyone will return to either their God given perfection with a pure soul, or better yet, a glorious, sinless state of a divine soul transformed by God's own love. Bless those that are not acting lovingly in their future state of perfection that they will one day reach. We are all equal in the eyes of God and loved equal. Let's not judge and condemn those who do not share our values and beliefs, who struggle, who may annoy or trigger us for various reasons, for underneath is a soul yearning for love. Instead, let's view the individuals with the eyes of compassion and love. Also, we need to have love and compassion for ourselves, for we too struggle in our own way. Be gentle with yourself and others, and strive to be in harmony and a close relationship with God, for this will help us with our worries and cares, and our guidance will become easier to discern. I hope that these lessons will help you on your spiritual journey. Thank you.